remember way back when Taylor started talking about Vue.js, and then Jeffrey started talking about Vue.js, and then I was like, I guess we're doing Vue.js now. And that is how I got into Vue, and I've never left. I love Vue. I love you, but I love Vue.js as well very much. I'm very grateful to Evan for bringing, I think that almost like that Taylor Otwell sense of really good taste to a JavaScript framework. But building one of the best JavaScript frameworks in the world wasn't enough. Evan went on to create Vite, which if you don't use Vue, you probably still use Vite. So you use something that Evan created. He's really taking hold of the JavaScript complexity and trying to tame it, which God bless him, that's very difficult. He is now the founder of a company called Void Zero, and he is here to talk to us today. Please welcome to the stage, Evan Yu. Good night.
Okay. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Woo! So, yeah, I haven't been to a Laracon for a very long time, so very stoked to be here. And today I'm going to be talking about Vue, Vite, and the future of JavaScript tooling. I know I'm wearing a PHP hat today, but this talk is about JavaScript. I'm sorry. Okay, so a bit about me, just to sort of catch up, because last time I've been at a Laracon was like 6 years ago, right? So I made Vue and Vite. I've been an independent open source developer since 2016. I'm founded a company called Void Zero in 2023. We've been running for almost 2 years now. And I'm now living in Singapore, right? How many of you have been to Singapore? Not a lot. It's a very long flight, I tell you. And the reason I took that whole flight to be here is because, well, I haven't been to a Laracon for such a long time. Last time was in 2019 in New York. That's 6 years ago, right? First time at a Laracon was in 2016. That's like 9 years ago. Crazy to think about. And in between 2019 and 2025, a lot of things happened, right? I think I was talking about Vue 3, which was not released yet in 2019. And after that, we released Vue 3 in 2020. I made Vite in 2020, founded the company. Taylor raised a lot more money. And here we are. And yeah, just going back to this tweet where it all started, Taylor was cool before Vue even hit 1.0. So I'd say Taylor has probably a very good taste in picking things. And to put this into context, right? This tweet was from 2015. That is this early in the life cycle of Vue, right? Vue was created in 2014. Ignore this spike; it's a bug in npm stats. Yeah, so that was 2015, and shortly after Taylor tweeted about this in 2015, we hit 1.0 in October 2015, right? And then in early 2016, I started working on Vue full time. And then I spoke at my first Laracon in 2016. That was July 2016, and then shortly after we released Vue 2. The next Laracon I attended was in 2019 in New York, and shortly after we released Vue 3. Vue 3 finally became the default in January 2022. That was the Vue 2 to Vue 3 story was a long one, right? We took a very long transition period. Ecosystem is still actually, there are still a lot of people using Vue 2 up to this day, but it was officially deprecated at the end of 2023. So if you're still on Vue 2, I would really urge you to upgrade. So now here we are at Laracon 2025. You might think, okay, does this mean Vue 4 is coming? Well, just here to tell you, no, it's not. We don't have plan for Vue 4 just yet. But let's take a look at Vue today in numbers. Just taking a look at both Vue 2 and Vue 3, we have over 10,000 plus commits, 500 plus releases over the years. We have more than 2 million users worldwide, 250,000 GitHub stars, 7 million weekly npm downloads, more than 1 billion monthly CDN requests on JS Deliver. So going back to here, when Taylor discovered it, it was just doing 1,800 per week downloads. I guess a lot of Laravel users back then were also just using Vue directly as a script or through a CDN. So that kind of, put it into perspective. But we're at like 7 million a week today. So that's a long way. And really, Vue got a lot to thank to the Laravel community. To thank Taylor and Jeffrey for discovering it and bring it to the wider community in Laravel. And yeah, it was really sort of important moment in the early growth trajectory for Vue. So thank you all. If you've used Vue with Laravel, thank you very much. I know some of you might have bent your knees to the React overlords, but I still love you. Okay, so for Vue 3, this is the stats. So Vue 3 has this dependency called @Vue/runtime core. So we use it to track the download count for Vue 3 itself. And we're looking at 76. Well, Vue 3 percentage actually is now at over 70%. So of all the downloads on NPM, more than 70% are on Vue 3 projects. And this has been growing pretty consistently. So looking at the growth of Vue 3 alone, compared to last year, it has more than 67% in growth. That's actually surprising to me. As a more than decade-old framework, we're still seeing very substantial growth in terms of total usage. So going back to what we are focusing on Vue nowadays, like I said, there's currently no plan for Vue 4 because Vue 2 to Vue 3, I know it was a pretty big, drastic change for a lot of people. So we really want to drive the idea home that, okay, like we want, the ecosystem to be stable. If you're building on Vue 3 now, you should expect your code to work the same way 5 years later or even 10 years later. We don't want to break stuff, right? So what are we working on, right? So stability is the obvious thing. Even when we ship new features, we don't want to break stuff. The next is DX. Vue as a framework has grown much larger in scope. So it's more than just its core library. It's more than just the files you run in the browser. It's also all the surrounding things, right? It's the dev tools, it's IDE support, it's the build tools. So speaking of DX, one of the reasons I created Vite was when I was looking at Vue CLI one day, and I was just tired of how slow it was. And I was like, I really need to build something just, specifically designed for Vue to make it build and work really fast. Turns out that was a great idea, and it was such a good idea that we eventually made it framework agnostic. But yeah, Vue was initially born just for Vue. And we also kept on improving the surrounding tooling, like the browser DevTools extension. We actually shipped a brand new version, V7. This one is completely rewritten from the ground up using Vue 3 itself. We shipped it earlier this year. The language tools, this is the low-level supporting tools for you to get better IntelliSense when you're working with Vue single-file components in your IDEs. So if you're using VS Code and using TypeScript with Vue single-file components, right? This is what makes it possible. And we've had a bit of technical stability issues when we upgraded the language tools to V2 because we were trying to tackle some of the double memory consumption issues and trying to just be more efficient. But that took also quite some time for us to figure out. So in the latest 3.0, which was released just a while ago, we finally figured out most of the issues, and we now shipping with a much more stable architecture and just makes in general working with TypeScript and Vue much more enjoyable. So what's coming in Vue 3.6, which is the latest minor that's currently in alpha? Again, no major changes. So if your code will continue to work exactly the same way. There are two main important internal improvements. One is the reactivity system refactor. Some of you may know that Vue's reactivity system is actually usable standalone as its own package. So you can actually use @Vue/reactivity as a standalone NPM module. And that's actually what Alpine is also built on top of. So the API contract of the reactivity system is actually pretty stable, standard, which allows us to actually rework how it's implemented internally without breaking anything externally, right? So we can, this is actually what we did in 3.6. We already did 3.4. We already did that once in the past where we completely refactored the system without breaking anything. And we're doing it again in 3.6. This time it's going to be even faster, right? So to put it in context, there is this kind of new trendy concept called signals in JavaScript nowadays. How many of you have heard the term signals? Okay, not a lot, right? But it's essentially a different way to call view refs. Okay, so it's the same idea of having reactive data sources, and you track their changes over time, and when you mutate something, you re-render stuff, right? So that's the whole concept about tracking and signals. In fact, in the JavaScript ecosystem, we're now seeing almost every single framework other than React is convergent on the same paradigm. So if you look at some of the newer frameworks, like not even newer frameworks, Angular now ships with signals, right? Preact ships with signals. Svelte, Solid, Svelte 5 also introduced signals. Solid is the one that popularized the idea of signals. So the whole JavaScript framework landscape is looking more and more like, here's React, here's everyone else is using signals, right? So the thing we did in 3.6 is we refactored everything again. So if you look at this benchmark, so the idea of signals got so universally accepted across major frameworks that there is actually a official TC39 proposal. That's a language proposal for JavaScript to make signals a built-in concept of the built-in constructor in the language itself. This thing is still pretty early, but when we were working on a polyfill for it, right, we noticed that, okay, it's pretty slow. So one of our team members, Johnson, he started tinkering around Vue's own reactivity system and also noticed it's not the fastest one. So decided to just like rebuild it. He initially implemented when he was working on our language tools because he needed incremental caching of the parts of when parsing the single file components. He ended up building the fastest possible signals implementation in existence called Alien Signals. And then we backported this into Vue. So that's the system we're using in 3.6, which means if Alpine upgrades its Vue reactivity dependency to 3.6, Alpine also gets faster. So, all right. So the other thing, major thing in 3.6 is vapor mode. So in short, what is vapor mode? I don't know how many of you have actually heard about this, but it's a different way to compile your Vue single file components. And it's mostly focused for extreme performance. How fast it is? If you look at the JS framework benchmark, which is probably the most widely known third-party benchmark for JavaScript framework rendering performance, previously Vue is, obviously everyone is almost faster than React, but Vue is like solidly behind Solid and Svelte, which is like, you know, these more lighter weight and faster newer generation frameworks. But with Vapor Mode, we actually jump ahead again. So with Vue Vapor Mode, we actually catch up in performance with these lighter, newer implementations, and the bundle size gets down to 7 kilobytes by default, right? So that's why it's called Vapor Mode. Some of the key facts: Vapor Mode supports exact same API with the code you're writing today, but it's a subset, right? So it does not support the full set of API. It supports enough for you to build exactly what you're building today. Currently, it only supports single file components and script setup, which means it's composition API only. It might be possible for us to give, to basically have opt-in options API support, but it would actually be, the reason we don't do it is because options API is not compiler friendly. This new whole mode is very compiler centric because when you write script setup, we're able to analyze the relationship between the JavaScript and the template much better and also produce more efficient output. But for the subset of the APIs that's supported in Vapor Mode, we guarantee the same behavior between virtual DOM mode and Vapor Mode. It just gets much faster in comparison. There's also granular opt-in, which means you can have an application that is still virtual DOM based, like the app you have today, and then embed Vapor Mode components inside of it. For example, if you have a page that is particularly performance sensitive, you can opt into Vapor Mode for that page only. And you can also nest virtual DOM components back inside Vapor. which means you can then have, if you have hardware dependency on a virtual DOM-based UI component library, you can also do that. So to illustrate the idea, on the left, we have the same single file component source. On the right, we have very different compilation output. So we don't have time to dig into the details here, but just to give you an idea, the code actually also gets a bit leaner as well. So it is now currently already available in the latest 3.6 alpha. It's still experimental. There are some features that we have pending PRs, but we haven't merged yet, which will be merged over the alpha to beta process. And in order to use it, simply add the Vapor attribute to your script setup tag, and that component becomes compiled in Vapor mode. Right? By default, if you opt in this way, it means you will be pulling in both the virtual DOM runtime and the Vapor runtime. So your app actually gets a bit heavier. So if you want to build a new app from the ground up using Vapor mode only, just change your root create app call to create Vapor app. And this will give you a smaller bundle and also Vapor only components. So that is Vapor mode. So now let's talk about Vite. I got 5 minutes left. That's okay. So we gotta go fast. We just crossed 23 million weekly downloads, and we just overtook Webpack this week. Woo-hoo! So yeah, this is something I actually didn't imagine would be possible when I just made Vite 5 years ago. I made a prediction in 2021 saying, okay, like a lot more people will be using Vite instead of Webpack starting in that year. People made fun of me. They're like, well, Webpack is here to stay. You're never gonna beat Webpack. Well, here we are. And it's been default in Laravel since V9, so that's like 3 years ago. Again, Taylor has great taste. He was in it before it was cool, right? So Vite now has a really big ecosystem. It's probably, a bit more lean towards the JavaScript ecosystem. There are a lot of full stack JavaScript frameworks built on top of Vite nowadays. Obviously, there's integration with Laravel. There's integrations with Rails, which is community driven. But so we're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of adoption, but that also makes us think about, like, what can we do to make Vite even better, right? People love it, but fundamentally, I've always, thought about, okay, like, if I made Vite, I have like infinite resource to rethink what Vite could be. What should I do, right? When I first created Vite, I still took a lot of shortcuts, right? For example, the current version of Vite that you are probably running today relies on a bunch of third-party dependencies like ESBuild, like rollup, right? Part of the reason why the dependency pre-bundling is so fast is because ESBuild is written in Go. It's extremely fast, but for production, we have to go for rollup. There's a lot of trade-offs here. So these different bundlers, like ESBuild is extremely fast, but when you ship for production, there are different requirements. You need smaller bundles, you want better chunk splitting, you want finer grain control. You also want, plugging API compatibility with the existing ecosystem. All of these things Rollup is really good at, but Rollup is written in JavaScript, and it's still kind of slow compared to native bundlers. And then for some React developers, in order to get React hot module replacements, they still need to transform their React components, either using Babel or SWC, which just adds additional overhead and inconsistency to the whole pipeline. So one thing we started thinking about maybe in early 2023 was like, what about we just write a new bundler for Vite itself, right? So we started working on the idea of a bundler called Rowdown. So when we started working on Rowdown, we also just followed the rabbit hole, because in order to build a bundler in JavaScript, you need a JavaScript parser, you need a transform setup, you need minifiers, you need resolvers, you need all these lower level things. And we realized, okay, like even at these level, the JavaScript ecosystem is just so fragmented. The challenge that we were facing in Vite is actually a reflection of the JavaScript ecosystem at large, right? So if you've worked with JavaScript tooling and digged into each layers, you'll notice like every single layer, there are just so many different options. And a lot of these higher level tools are actually, cobbled together using these different pieces. So we have like different parsers, transformers, test runners, linkers, formatters, bundlers. You get what I mean. So that eventually led to the idea of what if we start a company and just try to really build the JavaScript toolchain that we always wanted ourselves to unify things from the ground up, make it extremely performant, make it uniformly designed, and use it to power Vite. So this is what Voice0 is essentially doing nowadays. So the 4 major projects that we maintain: Vite, Vitess, Rodon, and OXC. And on the grand scheme of things, at the bottom we have OXC, which is the language toolchain that includes the parser, semantic analysis, transformer, resolver, etc. It is also the bottom layer for the linter and formatter. Then we have Rodon, which is the Rust-based bundler built on top of it. And we're going to put Rodon into Vite to replace both ESBuild and Rollup. So we want the performance of ESBuild. We want the API compatibility with Rollup. We want the advanced chunking control and output quality, minification quality of Webpack. So, and at the top, we want the development experience of Vite to be untouched, right? So that is the goal that we're aiming for. On top of that, we also have something called Vite Plus, which I'll talk a bit about later. The progress so far: OXC, we finished most of the stuff, and they're also really, really fast. If you're interested, you can check out the benchmarks, but typically, we no longer compare with JavaScript implementations. We actually only compare with like other implementations that's also written in Rust, and we're consistently 3 to 5 times faster. Rodon, like I said, we want to combine the best of the 3 existing solutions. We want to combine the strength of ESBuild, Rollup, and Webpack and build the best possible bundler. And we're going to put it into Vite, right? So this is currently already in technical preview. So there is a separate distribution called Rodon Vite. And you can, if you want to try it out today, you can just override it in your package.json. So the exact override format depends on the package manager you're using, but it's a dropping replacement. It works exactly the same, and it will likely make your production build, 3 to 10 times faster. So these are the real-world performance swings we're seeing. The fastest one got 16 times faster builds. Some of the more production-oriented ones. This one is actually outdated. So Linear just reported to us this morning that they got the build to be 6.5 times faster for a really huge production app, 20 megabytes of JavaScript. Yeah, thank you. And we also have, that's Vite Plus, which is work in progress. So this is the vision that the company Voice0 set out to do. It's a unified toolchain for JavaScript. So it's a dropping upgrade of Vite. It basically makes Vite more powerful. So we're still thinking about how this would sort of work in a context like Laravel or backend-centric frameworks. But for people who are just building direct Vite SPAs or building a Vite-based framework, this will be a drop-in replacement. So in addition to the development and build commands that we have today, it will integrate test, bench, linked, format, library bundling, scaffolding, code generation, and monorepo test runner caching out of the box, combined with GUI DevTools. So far, the progress we've spent the past 2 years mostly working on these lower level pieces, right? We check the boxes one by one, and we're now in the stage where we get to the fun part, is actually assembling these things together into a coherent experience out of the box, right? Kind of trying to do what Laravel is doing for PHP. So this is going to come out probably later this year with a preview and probably ship in early 2026. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Well done. Nicely done.
Thank you.
So here's her artisan jacket. Okay, so one question I have is, as you're building out like this whole tool chain ecosystem, one thing I have valued about Vue a lot is the stability. Yep. Even with Vue 2.7, you brought a bunch of the 3 stuff back to make that transition a lot easier. What are your thoughts on the stability and the ease of upgrade as you move on to taking on like these bigger challenges?
Yeah, this is obviously really important. Why emphasis, V Plus is going to be a drop-in upgrade. The Vite, like with roll down is a drop-in replacement of rollup. The API is exactly the same. We spend tremendous amount of effort on behavior alignment, trying to make sure when you upgrade from rollup-based Vite to roll-down-based Vite, the build should just work, right? That's what we get. Most of the people who are early adopters just report, okay, I didn't need to change anything. No source code changes. It just works, right? The build just gets faster,
Yeah.
right? So that's the focus.
And how much time do you get to code now that you've got these, 3 projects, Vue, Vite, Void, and you're the CEO of the company? So how much time are you getting to code anymore?
A lot less.
Yeah.
A lot less.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I kind of have to just block out weeks ahead of time to get time to code, because if I don't, then I get a lot of like just things coming up here and there. Context switching is very annoying,
Yeah.
but it's kind of necessary. So I'm kind of I would say like 75% like a product manager now, then 25% I try to get some time, still do some code.
Well, you're doing great work. Y'all give it up for Evan.
Thank you.
Good job.